All right, welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Wednesday, April 26, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it here today. So Meta earnings does not look like that's quite out yet. Just want to make a little announcement. I am on Twitter Spaces again at Blocks and Thoughts. Crypto Fundamentals will be doing a little bit of a discussion there. We can talk Meta earnings. I don't know if they're going to be out before then. They should be. They usually report pretty quickly. Doesn't look like they're quite out yet. Well, we'll do that and we'll do a little Q&A. But anyways, market's down here about half, just under 0.5%. The Qs are up about 0.5% there. And of course, that was on the back of Microsoft. So if we look at Microsoft here today, that held the gains too. So that's a good sign there for Microsoft. However, markets were still negative, except for the Qs, obviously. Just they make up such a big chunk of the Qs, but up 7.25 on MSFT. You'd expect the SPY to be green, and that's a little bit of sign of weakness here. Now, one thing that's slight positive here, we did save this green bar low here. That breakout bar from March 31st by about 20 cents, actually 19 cents to be exact. So 404.55, 404.36 was the close there. So again, definitely a good sell-off there, and they did save it by the end of the day, but we followed through here. The bears followed through, and now you can say, like, yes, we've definitely confirmed below that 20 moving average as well as this big trend line, and that may be, we can now say this is probably a failed breakout here. Maybe Meta can get us a bounce here. At this point, I think we do get a bounce. I just think markets, we had a pretty good 1-2 punch to the downside there, and the triple Qs managing to hang in there today. The semiconductors also held that 240 area, which I think is very important support on the daily time frame. In the near term, I still think we can bounce up a little bit, but at this point, it's starting to look more and more like the highs are in. We just had that big, outside move, big breakdown, yesterday, follow through there today. So bears falling through, and on light volume too. It's not like we're seeing panic volume here. The VIX never even took out yesterday's high. So really just kind of a grind lower all day long, a nice algo sell pretty much all day long. And it does look like bears are in complete control. For the bulls, you'd really need to get back above, 411.16. And obviously, that's a tall order right now. Now, again, I think the Qs here, which are in much better shape thanks to Microsoft. Again, Meta will tell a little bit more here. And again, we'll check back in on that periodically here. That does look like it's trading fractionally higher, but it's not anything crazy. I don't believe that report is out just yet. But the Qs are in better shape. Also, Amazon on Thursday as well. Don't forget that. And ServiceNow too, big cloud company. So that should be that's basically flat there as well. So, but either way, the triple Qs, before I get sidetracked, I still think there's potentially upside up to that 20 moving average. So we've had a nice kind of bounce here off the lows thanks to Microsoft. But if you get some, you get Meta to hold up, we get some news or something like that, we can definitely trade up into that 20 moving average. I don't see a ton more upside though. And kind of what I'm looking at here is, it's almost like this pattern is repeating here. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. If you just disregard Monday, it's almost the same exact setup, right? So that up move here from that bull flag, inverted hammer, then a flush. And that's kind of exactly what we got here. And then we kind of bounced up for 2 days. We didn't quite get to the 20 MA, but we did bounce up for 2 days. And then we kind of just grinded lower. Maybe we grind lower into FOMC, and then we get a pop off of that. We get a pop on Apple earnings. That's certainly a potential roadmap here. Again, we're just kind of just throwing that out there right now. It doesn't mean it has to happen, but it's definitely a very strikingly similar setup here. But in the short term, I think the Qs can get a little bit of a bid here, especially if Meta manages to hold up. If not, again, I still think you're probably, at least short term, the spiders are going to have supported that 50 MA, even if we close below this green bar low. It's, it doesn't mean that we crash the next day. It just means it's a huge sign of weakness. But you'll have support at that 50 MA, also that, 400 whole round number. So we're not going to go down in a straight line. And a lot of the time, if we start to get a bounce, we could probably back test this down sloping trend line here. In fact, that's probably what will happen. So spiders, pretty good downdraft today again. And really, again, just like yesterday, we went no bid and we pretty much just sold right off into the close again, outside of that little pop there at the end, some short covering, probably trying to avoid a repeat of Microsoft, because Microsoft popped the futures in the after hours, right, yesterday. So if we look at the ES, we had that big pop yesterday, and short's probably just covering to avoid that. But either way, a weak look here, and I do think that it's more and more likely that the highs are in. So markets definitely got to be careful here. Another reason here, let's look at the transports, which you talked about. That's as brutal as it gets. So big 2 power moves, down 3.5% today. UPS really following through. I do not like UPS right now. This has probably got to go down to 170 at this point. So I would avoid UPS for now. It's not showing strength, and that's dragging down FedEx with it. FedEx should have a little support at 220, but again, not good to see that have an outside move like that. Jets taking a hit as well. So weakness here in the transports and weakness in the semis, although the semis are holding up here, and this is something we've been warning about for like a couple weeks now, and it's coming to fruition here. So not a good look here overall, and I think we're getting closer and closer, and this market's getting more and more fragile pretty much by the day. Now again, one of the couple of things here that lead me to believe we could have a short-term bounce is even with the FRC turmoil here, you did have KRE green on the day. So that was up 25 cents, believe it or not. Generally, this has been a good leading indicator. And speaking of leading indicators, let's look at Bitcoin here, and we'll look at the futures in a second. Actually, let's just flip over to TradingView right now. So this was flying all the way up to 30K earlier today. And right, this has been a leading indicator the last couple of days, right? I said last week, like, hey, maybe this is telling us the stocks are going to come down next week. That definitely happened. We did get a nice bounce off of that, though, even though it was an intraday bounce. And take a look at the last hour here on Bitcoin. That's bam, $2,000 collapse there. But it was bouncing really nicely up until then. So maybe the markets can get a little bit of a bounce over the next couple of days, although that's a really ugly candle, and that's probably telling us the highs are in here. I told you guys 30,000 would be resistance, and it is held in a massive fashion. And that's a huge rejection there. Some more consolidation here takes you down to 25 in the near term, but either way, pretty good dump there on Bitcoin. But again, leading indicators there for a possible bounce here, right? So they defended that 50 moving average on the continuous Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin futures here, but they got a bounce. And again, I think the spiders could be in for a repeat. Maybe we come up here and we trade up, maybe like this, into that trend line. And I think that'll be good resistance if tested. So we'll see what we get here. Looks like markets are bouncing up a little bit. So Meta might be out. Let's take a look here. Yeah, Meta getting a pop, 216. There we go, 220. So Meta to the rescue there. Let's take a look. Well, yeah, all the way up to 220. Let's look at the NQ. Yep, coming up off the lows there. Let me just get rid of these lines. Some intraday resistance there. Nice pop for the NQ. Big pop there. All right, so maybe they can live to fight another day here, but either way, some serious technical damage done over the last couple of days. And we'll make note of that moving forward. Anyways, let's get into it. Semis 240, that's still holding. That's the important part. IGV, and I'm going to kind of buzz through this today because I do have to get ready for that Twitter space, but I'll be covering the markets in there if you want to catch it. But IGV up 25 basis points, holding that 50 moving average. This should get a bounce here, but again, outside move there. We talked about that yesterday. That is not a good sign. Moving forward, transports, this has support here, but this is a huge breakdown, and again, that's just weekly, boom, bear flag down. We talked about that bear flag for a couple of weeks, and hopefully you guys were able to be warned by that. Russell 2000 also much lower here today, so that should have some support around 170. And the Dow should have support around 330, 331 in the short term. But it does look like the highs are in there, and we're not getting up to 343. I would say probably 338, 339 is your max move there for the DIA. Into bond land, so ZT coming in a little bit. This was higher earlier. So bonds were catching a little bit of a bid off of the kind of FRC fears, but they backed off a little bit. And here's another reason why you could possibly get a little bit of relief here, as bonds weren't freaking out like they were yesterday. The 10-year yield was actually up a little bit. The 30-year up is a little bit as well. Again, even if they have downside in yields, I don't see a ton of it. But again, bonds, they've been catching a bid lately, so we'll respect it here in the near term. XHB finally had some downside here, down 1.4, holding the 20 moving average, but nice little outside move there, follow through from yesterday, and lost that 68 handle, right? So if we just take kind of a trend line here, This is kind of where you reversed, and then you kind of went up and tested it. Let's just move it here. But you know what? In fact, you could move it right there. You probably even, you know, all the way over out here. So that's been a pivot point, right? You know, we're back below that, you know, and again, might get a little bit of a bounce here, but I told you 70 would be resistance. It's been a good level, and it's coming back in. ITB outside move, possible island reversal. So familiar with an island reversal? It's when you have a big gap up, and then you just kind of hang there for a few days, and then boom, downside, little topping tail. So that should be poised to test. You know, you got the 20 MA there, and then after that, $70. But nice to see those home builders finally coming back to earth a little bit. VNQ closed below this pivot. That's weak. That probably has to go down to 78, 75. So real estate in trouble here. XLF, nice move to downside. Remember, we cut through this trend line, sell off back below all 4 major moving averages. So not a good look there, although KRE was green. So it's holding up again. I've been telling you guys, I don't see a ton of downside here. I just don't see the upside either. But banks holding up. There's KBE there as well. You know, the government said FRC. They're not going to bail out FRC. They'll bail out when they need to. So I think that's really the important thing to consider there. But broker dealers continuing downside. I've been telling you guys for weeks as well. Weekly bear pattern, that's going lower. Remember, 20 weekly MA rejection there. We talked about that last week. Crude here, backing off again a little bit. So that's through the gap. This should get to 70. So that's where it's got really good support. Unless it can reverse right now, I think it's probably headed down to 70. You had good volume there on that dump as well. So that's probably where it wants to go. I thought maybe it would have to consolidate a little bit more, but crude a little bit on the weaker side here, obviously, and through that gap. So $70 is really the next big area I see. If you get through that, crude can go lower. XLE back down to that 82.25, or not 82.25, 82.72 area, and 82.83 was that gap. We just closed it there, so we closed that gap there. So nice little spot. Maybe you can get a little bit of a reversal there. Again, I do think the markets are set up for a bounce, so it would make sense XLE can bounce there. But isn't it amazing how it had a nice bid on Monday, and then it just gave all that back and then some. The last 2 days, XOP much weaker. That has support at about 120. So we'll see if that gets down there. OIH also on the weaker side. This probably doesn't have anything. It's into a little bit of support now, but I would say 260 is a little bit better of a level there for the OIH, but that did back off. Nat gas contract rollover, gapped up into the 50, made a slight higher high, and then backed off a little bit there. I think a higher low here gets you up to $3 very quickly. Nothing's changed too much there. Dollar index, again, all over the map, but you'd think this would be higher with the markets down as much as they are, but again, bonds have been getting a bid, and that's been putting pressure on the dollar index a little bit. I think it's still struggling with that 20 MA, and you need to go down and test 100. That could give the markets a lift, and that could play into the bounce theory here that I've been talking about, obviously. Gold here, hanging in there okay, although it did back off the highs a little bit. Still holding that 1994 level, but I think this is a matter of time here. You're kind of consolidating above it, and that tells me it's setting up for a break lower. So I'm a little bit weaker, a little bit less bullish on gold right now. Again, if the dollar rolls over, it could still catch a bid or still hold up, but you're kind of consolidating above that green bar low, so that tells me it's trying to set up for a move lower. Same thing with silver. It's consolidating above 25 last several days. You know, in a bull market, when you hit that 20 moving average, especially the first hit, you should pop off of that, and that's not happening. So I think this is setting up for a move to 24 to 23.50 here. But for right now, hanging in there okay. Platinum also backing off. I wouldn't do anything with this at the moment. It's got to let that 20 moving average catch up. And then copper here, kind of just an inverted hammer. It's hanging in there okay. This is still setting up for that move to everybody's favorite, 375. Already covered Bitcoin here, so let's just get back over to Meta. Bang, Meta 227, got all the way up to 232. I'll tell you right now, I've told my members this in our private streams, this is a short at 236 if you want it. And where I'm getting that from is this weekly 50% fib, weekly 200 and 100 moving average right in that area. If you get up there, that's a definite short. So I like that in that area, but nice pop for Meta. Let's look at the NQ. NQ holding the gains here. A little bit off the highs, obviously, as Meta is, but nice pop there in the after hours, and ES a little bit as well. Although, big tech definitely going to help out the Nasdaq more. And when the Nasdaq's leading, it generally gives you it gives me a more of an upside bias than if the ES is leading. So in the short term, again, big picture, I think we can get up maybe to that 20 moving average. It might be a little overzealous to look for that, because the last time we didn't quite get there, but Mark Zuckerberg to the rescue for now. So we'll call it that for today. Anyways, come find me on the Twitter space. It'll be starting in about 10-15 minutes. You guys take care. Subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. Talk to you all later.